You gotta love the social media era in the NBA because of days like yesterday. We had a Yahoo report or article drop saying LaMelo Ball is frustrated with the Hornets after a 4-11 start and will be open to being traded. And then shortly after, LaMelo Ball responds on Twitter with the clown emojis and everything like that. And it leaves all of social media, all of the fans, all of the sports media, everybody in the sports world conflicted of trying to figure out, is this true? Is it not? Oftentimes, you'll get a report like this. It'll be a leak. Something will come out without a player wanting it to or whatnot. And then you have this whole act of a player of, no, that didn't come from me. And then you hear 3 months later that it is true and the player did request a trade and all that. I remember Jimmy Butler's agent, right, like a year ago when all the reports are coming out. Look, Jimmy doesn't want to be with the Heat, yada, yada, yada. And his agent, like, y'all didn't hear that from us. We never said that. Jimmy never did that, just for it to all kind of come out and kind of seem like it is exactly what Jimmy had wanted at the time. This one is interesting, though. This one is very interesting. And I'm going to give y'all my point of view because time will tell. I got to take LaMelo Ball's word for what he says. But even without LaMelo addressing it, some of this doesn't make too much sense to me. Number one, to say that LaMelo Ball is frustrated with a 4-11 start to the season and that now has him open for a trade is like the first red flag for me. And I'm not here to go at anybody's journalistic integrity or call anybody a liar or anything like that. I'm just using my basketball brain and some of my common sense to put points together. But the 4-11 and frustration part is the first thing that stood out to me for multiple reasons. Number one, already in these 11 games, LaMelo has missed 5 of them. Brandon Miller has missed time. This is not a new thing over there in Charlotte. This has been something that we have seen for pretty much all of LaMelo's career. Number two, there is no way that during this summer, coming into this season, LaMelo Ball had any high hopes for this team doing anything except growing in marginal ways. But there's no way that last year they won 19 games. The year before, they won 21, and then the year before that, they won 27. And somehow, LaMelo Ball and his camp convinced themselves that coming into this year, it was going to magically be different. There is no way. LaMelo Ball, his team, everybody around in Charlotte, they have to have had some sense of understanding. We want to get better. That starts with LaMelo and Brandon Miller being able to be available and growing as players, and then also having key additions, which I think they did a really good job, and we don't give them enough credit, at least not like on a national level, about how well they drafted this year. The Charlotte Hornets, for the first time in a very long time, like nailed their draft, not even with just the top pick, but everything else after Con Knipple. Like they really nailed it. And that draft alone, I feel like has given them some momentum of having some hope for the future when you talk about keeping LaMelo, Brandon, all of the whole shebang. But this draft class gave me confidence. I'm sure it gives the Charlotte Hornets fan base confidence. And to see some of the product early from these young players should give the front office even more satisfaction that they are headed into the right direction. And that, to me, is one of the main points about all of this, is if I'm LaMelo Ball, if I'm Charlotte, there is no really rush for me. We're not looking at our season on a wins and loss basis. For sure, you don't want to have 19 wins again this year. For sure, you would love to get 30 wins for the first time since 2020. For sure. But to bank this season on making the playoffs or getting past the first round, those are things that you dream of coming into the season when everybody's optimistic about their team. But if we're talking realistically, there is nobody that had the Charlotte Hornets taking the NBA by storm. And if you did have some dream scenario for them, it involved Brandon Miller being healthy, and it involved LaMelo Ball being able to be healthy at a sustainable level. We haven't seen Brandon Miller, and I don't know how long. And again, like I said recently, LaMelo Ball has already missed 5 games. But in the midst of all that, in the midst of the 4-11 start, you love to see some of the flashes from Zion James, Rakan Knipple, Kalkbrenner. You love some of those additions like Colin Sexton here and there. Miles Bridges has had some games. LaMelo is obviously, when he's on the floor doing his thing, him and Con Knipple seem like they can work together and will be able to have a future together. To me, I've enjoyed some of the steps that they've taken as an organization. And again, I'm not a person that's glued to the wins and losses column for a team like this. That's just not where they're at. And I think we have to do a better job in the basketball world and in the basketball media of accepting that, understanding what levels teams are at and what means more for them. What means more for the Hornets is for them to take step in a developmental process. Is for those young guys to be able to show something worth building around and continuing to strengthen this core because you've had some injury issues with Brandon Miller and LaMelo Ball. And to now have a guy like Con Knipple that even when those guys are out, there is something that your fan base can gravitate to and hang on to. And that, to me, sets you up for a major play later on during this offseason, depending on how the rest of this season goes. If you have another year where you're one of the bottom 5 teams out east, you're one of the bottom 7 teams in the entire NBA, and you find yourself in a lottery, and you maybe not win the lottery and have the number 1 overall pick, but let's just say you get pick 3. Let's just say you get pick 4 or 5. Based off of the draft you just had, based off the guys that you already have in your core that we look at as the core pieces, I think as a puzzle, it is getting easier for Charlotte to continue to build. And let alone if they were, for whatever reason, a team that did win the lottery. Because as long as you're at the bottom of the conference or at the bottom of the NBA, you clearly have a chance. You don't have to be the god-awful worst team in the entire landscape now that we have the evened out odds. So if this team was to be able to get a Debonsa, a Boozer, a Peterson, and even outside of those guys, based off what we've seen early on in the college basketball landscape, this draft is going to have a surplus of talent to where even if you don't get a top 3 pick, if you end up with 4, 5, 6, again, you'll be able to get some high value talent to put there. And I believe the more pieces you have in your core, the easier it is to hit on picks where you don't have to always go for the upside. I mean, 2 years ago, we seen them take Salon with the 6th or 7th pick because they were swinging for the fences. And this is a team that has had some very, very tough draft choices and decisions that they've made. Sometimes it's not always on them. Sometimes it is. You know, the James Bouknight situation is not anything that anybody could have predicted. You know, the Kai Jones pick could have been a reach. There's a lot of things in their history when it comes to drafting that you just kind of scratch your head at. Even the Salon pick, he's still young. He's still raw. We're going to figure that out and give him enough time to fully develop. But boy, this last draft class really saved. I don't even know if save is the word, but it just gave you a breath of fresh air when you think about the Hornets. And again, one of the other things that I think is important to talk about when you speak on LaMelo Ball being frustrated, and we talked about this on the Numbers on the Board show, is how could LaMelo Ball be frustrated if that was something that people are going to try to run with. LaMelo Ball has not played over 65 games since his second year. And before that, next to that is his rookie year at 51 games. His most games played per season is the first 2 seasons, 51 as a rookie, 75 as a sophomore. And the 75 games played is when he was able to be a second-year All-Star, and you were able to really see LaMelo Ball be that guy that we're still looking to see him be. And we get flash for that of that type of play every single year. It's just, again, about being on the floor. Since those first 2 years, 36 games, 22 games, 47 games. Again, 9 out of 15 games already this year. So if I'm LaMelo Ball, or if I'm LaMelo Ball's team, or I'm somebody that can have communication with LaMelo, the one thing I would tell him and a lot of other stars, because it will be frustrating, right? You know, losing is never fun. Being in these situations where nobody is taking you serious, looking around the NBA and seeing a lot of your peers being able to have playoff moments. They're saying guys are better than you feel like they're not. They're just maybe in a better situation. There's a lot of things internally that we will never know. You know what I mean? I don't know what the medical staff looks like. I don't know about any in-house situations. All we know is the product that we see on the floor and how we can evaluate that. Anything internally with an organization we do not see. But the article was positioned that LaMelo was frustrated after a 4-11 start, kind of saying that LaMelo maybe thought that there was not going to be a 4-11 world for the Hornets, where, again, I just don't know anybody who knows basketball that was thinking that it wouldn't be like this, right? Maybe you had them at 7-9, but nobody thought they was going to be 11-4. Nobody thought that in 15 games they would have a positive 500 record. But again, if LaMelo isn't on the floor, how can his team be successful? But again, to get back to my original point, LaMelo, Ja Morant, you see it out there in Phoenix with Devin Booker. You saw what happened when Damian Lillard left Portland and went to Milwaukee. The internet and social media is obsessed with making guys leave their situations, because in social media land, it's so big on ring culture. But what we have to get back to recognizing is that everybody will not be a champion. Everybody will not have a chance to lift and hold the Larry O'Brien. That's just what it is. You know what I mean? There are so many talented players. There are so many incredible careers. There's so many great organizations. Everybody, we can only have one champion every single year. That's what it is. So as a player, you have to value other things. It's not that you don't value winning. It's not that you don't care about winning. But the social media era has put guys in a very tough spot. It's like, oh, if you don't leave, you don't care about winning. You just care about being highly paid. You just care about yourself. You just care about your stats. And then the minute you do leave, it's like, oh, he sold his soul. He ran from the grind. He had the team up to win. So it's a lose-lose situation. So in that context, I prefer guys to be more on the Devin Booker path. Hey, you have a city behind you. You have a city that embraced you. You have an organization that gave you the contract, that drafted you, that allows you to be the face of their franchise. If LaMelo Ball were to leave the Hornets right now and go anywhere else, he's probably going to be in somebody else's bubble. You know, when you think about Phoenix, you think about Devin Booker, right? Kevin Durant and Bradley Beal got there. They talked about, like, this is Devin Booker's team. This is his ship. And to some people, that don't mean a lot. To some people, that don't mean a lot. But to some others, and to hear what Dame was talking about, to hear, to see how the situation was when Kevin Durant went to Golden State and was winning championships, was the Finals MVP, that was the signal that he was the best player on those teams. But it still was running through Steph Curry. It was still Steph Curry's town. It was still Steph Curry's shit. And to be able to have a franchise and a city behind you, to be the guy that when you look into the crowd, you're the jersey. You are what they sell. You go out to the grocery store, you go out here left and right, and everybody's catered to you. This is your shit. I just don't think people understand the magnitude of that. And to be able to be the guy that can ultimately, help shift the trajectory of the franchise and organization, it just means a lot. And I do think that the marriage between LaMelo and Charlotte is very, very close to actually materializing into something that can make them both happy, and it'll be well worth the wait. LaMelo Ball is only, 24 years old. He's only 24. LaMelo Ball also has 4 years left on his deal, and it ain't crazy, ridiculous money. He's making $37.9 this year. Next year is $40.7. The year after that is $43.5. And then the last year is $46 million. In a world where we're seeing guys re-signing for 55, 60. I mean, Devin Booker just got 75, on a 2-year, $150 million extension. He's going to be making $75 million. So to see a guy like LaMelo making this much money, and he's the face of your franchise, he's your all-star caliber player that you push, this is a bargain right now. And outside of him, as of right now today, because we'll see whatever Brandon Miller extension and everything else looks like down the line, as of today, LaMelo Ball is the only $30+ million player on this entire payroll. You have Miles Bridges for this year and the next year. That's like $27 to $25 million. This team is going to have an opportunity over the next few years, if they continue to draft right, if they continue to put their drafted players in the proper position to excel. They're only going to be a piece or two away to have a really good team, and they're going to have the money. They're going to have really good talent. I love what Coach Charles Lee has done in his first couple years there. Obviously, we'll be able to gauge him more as a coach when the meaningful games show up. But they're not that far away. The biggest thing for them is health. That is the biggest thing. Health, health, health. It'll really help this team if Brandon Miller, Con Knipple, LaMelo Ball can all be on the floor, and then you throw in Zion James, you throw in Kalkbrenner, you still got Miles Bridges. I love the early addition of Colin Sexton through these early portions of the game. He was really good when his team was fully healthy, coming off the bench, adding a punch for them. Like, I really like this team. And then again, I think further. I see a 4-11 start, and I'm like, okay, of course, you rather win that game. You want to win that. You would like to beat the Pacers, a team that's also struggling. But I look further and further, and I think to myself, man, Boozer, Peterson, DePonsa, Chris Sinak Jr. from Houston, you know what I'm saying? Caleb Wilson over there, up the street at UNC. Like, there are some situations where the Hornets leave next year's draft, and we're like, oh, shit, Everything is going to circle back to LaMelo Ball, which is why my first point was frustration. You're part of the frustration. You're part of the lack of success. And there's no way that you looked at this roster coming into this season thinking, hey, that's it. But the Detroit Pistons showed us that it don't take too much time of waiting. They got the Jalen Durans. They got the Asar Thompsons. They drafted Deron Hollins. And their best player, Cade Cunningham, is a guy that is available. And so if you can get LaMelo available, if you can get Brandon Miller available, and you can continue to build on these draft prospects that you just hit on the last year or so, in the next year or two, this could easily be a team that's right there in a playoff mix. And because you haven't committed a bunch of your money, this is also a team that, they're not going to go out and get a Kevin Durant level star. But as far as rounding out your team, going and get a good veteran presence, getting somebody with some playoff experience, getting somebody with some toughness, getting a specialist, which you may need to surround Khan and LaMelo and Brandon Miller with somebody with some defensive edge. You can go out there and get that. You can get some punch off the bench, some sharp shooting, whatever. They'll have the money to allocate to that. So all in all, that is my reaction to it. My last point that I would think of is like, what even is the value of LaMelo? Like if LaMelo and his team obviously, again, was saying to themselves that they are frustrated. Because again, respect to the journalist who wrote the article, this has happened before. Where an article comes out, a report comes out, and somebody tries to come out and down it and call it a lie and say it's not true and they happy where they at. Just for 3 months down the line, everything that the report said comes to light. That has happened before. We cannot ignore that in our game. We cannot. If that tended to be true, where would LaMelo Ball really go? There are certain guys that when you say something or you say that they're available, there's instantly teams that you're like, oh, I can see that, or that makes sense, or that makes sense. I don't know LaMelo Ball's value. I think he is better suited staying where he's at, fully being embraced, allowing his team to continue to look at him as the face of the franchise and to do what he wants, and to have it, being based off of him, at least for now, because we'll see how Colin Knippel continues to grow. But I don't see a team investing too much into 36, 22, 47 being the last 3 years of games played. The last 3 years, he's not sniffed 60 games. It's tough, and you've already missed 6 games or so, 5 games out of the 15 that y'all played. It's tough. Luckily for the Charlotte Hornets, today LaMelo was asked about it after practice or during practice, and I thought he had a great couple of answers to the questions that they were giving him. He basically said that, he's happy in Charlotte. He still feels that this team has what it takes, which I, again, just broke down, and I believe the same thing in the future. Hopefully he ain't meaning that they're going to turn this year around and do anything crazy there. But he still sees the vision, and he ain't bothered when people make reports like that. It's a part of the game. What matters to him is that everybody on the inside of the organization is on one accord and understands what's going on. And I felt that was a really mature answer and perspective to give, and that's how it should be. Guys are going to write articles. People are going to have rumors. People are going to believe what they want to believe because, yeah, for a second early in LaMelo Ball's career, I was one of those guys that was like, yeah, he probably won't stay too long because of the perception of the Ball family and everything LeVar was saying. I'm like, yeah, I could see LaMelo Ball trying to force his way out and get to a Clippers. He was the main attraction, still is a shoe that people love. The kids love him, all-star. It made sense. If they weren't going to be able to make a winning team around him, yeah, LaMelo Ball was going to be out if he was able to be at that all-star level that we've seen from year 2. And since then, he just has been able to be healthy. So let's get healthy, LaMelo. Let's continue to draft well, Charlotte, and let's continue to develop this talent. But together, I just think it makes more sense. The Hornets don't really get much right now, even if they get over LaMelo or want to put him out there. Both of the marriage, it just doesn't make sense for them to split right now. He's 24 years old. Even when a contract is up after these last 4 years on his deal, he'll only be 28. He won't even be 30 yet. He won't even be 30 yet. So they have a lot of time to get this together, and everything that I've seen points to the trajectory of the Hornets going up as far as their future. So, as always, I appreciate y'all. I am Pee Wee the Plug. Stay locked in here all season long for news, takes, whatever, and I'll see y'all soon. I'm out. Peace.